the spark on the starting line, in a symphony of screaming engines and the blur of motion, there once stood a figure frozen in elegance. Not a driver, not a mechanic, but just as recognizable, just as essential to the theater of motorsport. She stood poised, unshaken by the roar of a V10, unfazed by the media chaos, grounded on her mark. She was the grid girl, a symbol, a flash of glamour in a world of grease and gears, a visual punctuation to the anticipation before the lights went out. And though they no longer grace the modern grid, their story is one worth telling, a story of beauty, culture, controversy, and change. This is not a eulogy. This is a celebration, an invitation to remember, to explore. Let us go back to the very beginning, where glamour met gasoline. The grid girl did not emerge from the margins of fashion or motorsport. She was born in the spotlight. The concept began quietly in Japan during the late 1960s. The name Rosa Ogawa may not echo like Senna or Lauda, but her legacy lives on. She appeared at the Japanese Grand Prix as a ceremonial presence, standing beside the winning car in a simple but stunning gesture of pageantry. It worked. By the early 1970s, the automotive world began to notice. As corporate sponsorships infiltrated motorsport and marketing merged with machinery, grid girls became living billboards of allure and branding. Their duty, to represent teams, sponsors, and the event itself, to frame the grid like ornaments on a Christmas tree of combustion. They held driver name boards. They wore liveries matching Marlboro or Shell or Lotus. They became visual identifiers in the chaos. But more than that, they brought a surreal balance to the danger and testosterone of racing. They were elegance on the edge of violence. From track to tabloid, the rise of the icon. By the 1980s and 1990s, grid girls had become cultural fixtures. In an era where live TV coverage exploded and motorsport was rebranded for mass consumption, grid girls were in nearly every pre-race shot, every promotional poster, and every media package. The outfits became more stylized. Think thigh-high boots, PVC catsuits, mirrored aviators, or crop tops adorned with cigarette logos. The style was unmistakable, often emulated in music videos, print ads, and pop culture. Some of the women standing on the grid weren't merely models. They were stars in the making. Katie Price, later known as Jordan, famously began as a grid girl. So did Nell McAndrew, who became Lara Croft's real-life model. Gemma Atkinson, now an actress and TV personality, once held aboard trackside. They became aspirational. To many, they weren't just models on the asphalt. They were symbols of the aspirational lifestyle motorsport sold. Fast cars, fashion, fame, and freedom. Spectacle and shadows, the controversy emerges. As the 2000s unfolded, cultural lenses shifted. Conversations grew louder. Were grid girls celebratory or sexist? Were they empowered figures embracing femininity in a male-dominated world? Or were they props in a theater designed for the male gaze? The debate simmered. For every driver who praised their presence, there was a journalist or academic criticizing their purpose. Critics argued that the tradition reduced women to decorative roles in a context dominated by men driving, engineering, and managing. They argued the grid girl was a relic. Supporters countered that these were professional women. Many had contracts, autonomy, and agency. They chose the role, loved the spotlight, and considered it a launchpad. Still, the tension between perception and reality grew tighter with every racing season. Formula One's fine line. Nowhere were grid girls more iconic than in Formula One. Monaco, Silverstone, Monza. These weren't just races, they were catwalks. The paddocks were palaces of fashion and exclusivity, and grid girls were queens of a certain kingdom. And for a long time, the establishment backed them. Bernie Ecclestone, the sport's controversial patriarch, was a vocal defender. But as Formula One changed ownership in the late 2000s, so too did its public values. Liberty Media took control, promising a more modern, inclusive, and global F1. In 2018, the bomb dropped. Formula One announced it would no longer feature grid girls. The reason? The practice was at odds with modern-day societal norms. Cue outrage. Some fans called it political correctness gone mad. Others applauded it as long overdue. Teams like Mercedes and McLaren expressed support. Others, privately, were skeptical. The reaction was global. It touched nerves far beyond pit lanes. Global glamour beyond Formula One. Grid girls were never exclusive to Formula One. In MotoGP, their style was more rebellious. Leather, attitude. They weren't just posing. They embodied the edge of motorcycling culture. In Australian supercars, the grid girl was part of the sunshine and heat narrative. Bikini shoots, big sunglasses, a Southern Hemisphere spin on the tradition. Touring car events, rallycross, drift championships. The grid girl was there, always standing in the no man's land between the front bumper and the finish line. Some events went further. In Japan, race queens became a cultural phenomenon. They had magazines, autograph sessions, calendars. They weren't background. They were the brand. And for decades, they helped make motorsport visually distinctive. Their presence was as recognizable as any team livery or tire sponsor. From girls to kids, the new image. After F1's decision, change was swift. Enter the grid kids. Children from local karting clubs or motorsport programs began appearing on the grid, holding hands with drivers or waving flags. It was wholesome. It was diverse. It was clearly designed to soften motorsport's image and inspire the next generation. The contrast was stark. Gone were the leather boots and body-hugging jumpsuits. In their place, polo shirts, sneakers, and nervous smiles. Was it better, safer, more progressive? Perhaps. But something intangible was lost. The grid had changed, not just visually, but emotionally. The sense of theater had been rewritten. The ritual of the pre-race grid walk now felt more muted, more corporate. Still, many agreed, evolution was necessary. Legacy in motion. Even as they disappeared from pit lanes, the grid girls lived on, in memory, in retro photo spreads, in vintage racing posters that now fetch a fortune, in Instagram accounts paying tribute to the 80s and 90s race weekends, in the stories shared by fans who remember the roar of the engines and the shimmer of a sequined silhouette, and in the careers of those who started trackside and ended up on runways, TV screens, and global campaigns. More importantly, the grid girl legacy sparked critical conversations about gender, visibility, empowerment, and performance. They forced motorsport to reckon with its past while stepping into the future. A return in different form. Today, with AI influencers, VR podium girls, and social media ambassadors, the essence of the grid girl reemerges in virtual form. Holograms at Tokyo Auto Salon, Instagram models recreating grid girl aesthetics for fashion brands. Even brands nodding back to the aesthetic in ironic or nostalgic campaigns. The role has shifted, no longer bound to the grid, but living in pixels, in culture, in memory. It raises a new question. Was the grid girl a problem or a mirror? Elegance on the edge. This is not a call for nostalgia, nor is it an endorsement of the past. It is, however, a tribute to the women who stood poised in the chaos, who held the names of legends before they took off into battle, who smiled under the sun while history thundered behind them. They were more than background. They were mood. They were visual rhythm. They were grace beside the grit. And for a time, they defined the edge where spectacle met speed. The grid girls are gone, but they are not forgotten. Their story lingers in the photos, the posters, and the hearts of those who knew the sound of engines and the sight of elegance right there on the edge.